Hello, and welcome to the Let Them Live podcast. I'm Emily Burning, your host, and also the president and co-founder of Let Them Live. We bring you interviews with unsung heroes and inspiring individuals who are in the fight to save babies, mothers, and fathers from abortion. Our goal is to amplify their voices and bring their stories to the forefront, shedding light on the incredible work they do and the lives they touch. This is more than just a podcast. It's a platform that allows everyone to share their pro-life stories and inspire us to passionately continue advocating for life. All right, welcome back to the Let Them Live podcast. I am super excited to get started again. I've had a little bit of a break from podcasting, but I'm excited to have Loren. Loren is our first guest back on since I've taken a break. And Loren, we actually got connected through a mutual friend named Melissa. And can you tell me a little bit about like how you got connected with Melissa, what you guys were doing together? And then I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so recently I interviewed Melissa for a pro-life ministry that I recently started, and I'm going to share her story of choosing life and also having an abortion. And when we had those conversations, she thought of you, thought of Let Them Live, and thought this would be a cool opportunity to highlight the ministry that I'm doing.
Absolutely. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about your ministry, who you are, and what your inspiration was behind starting your ministry.
So my name is Loren Ward. I was born and raised in the Philippines. I recently immigrated to the US in March of 2015 with my family. So I've been living here in the US for quite a while. While in college, I was studying journalism and sociology. And I was finishing up my last semester in college earlier this year when my boyfriend and I went through an unplanned pregnancy. So our lives completely changed on February 23 of this year. I found out that I was pregnant at a doctor's appointment, and I came home and I gave Cooper, my boyfriend, a Valentine's box with two pink shoes in it. And we were both scared. We were college seniors trying to graduate college on time, and we had a lot of things going on. We were not married at the time. We'd been together for 2 years when we found out. So it was very unplanned. We were very shocked. We were really scared, but we were really excited and joyful to welcome a little baby into our lives. And on March 13, we had our first ultrasound. We were excited to meet our baby, but unfortunately, we had already lost our baby. At some point, the baby had stopped developing in my womb, and we don't know when the actual miscarriage happened, but the doctors had us do another ultrasound to confirm that I had already lost the baby, which we found out on March 31st. That was a really difficult time for the both of us. Going through an unplanned pregnancy is already challenging, but on top of that, we were experiencing a lot of grief for the baby that we were wanting to meet and wanting to hold in our arms. So in April, we actually 2 days after we found out that I had already lost the baby, Cooper ended up proposing to me. And in that season of loss, we were able to have moments of joy. And so he proposed on April 2nd and we eloped on April 8th. And unfortunately, 3 days after our wedding, I physically miscarried. So we spent our first week as a newly married couple dealing with a miscarriage. And so after I went through that loss, it really opened my eyes to what other women are experiencing when they go through unplanned pregnancies. And that was just so, it just broke my heart. And I wanted to highlight the strength and the resilience needed to go through an unplanned pregnancy. Likewise, I also wanted an outlet to deal with my grief. Like I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, and I was writing in my own time, but I just wanted to do something else to deal with that grief and just honor people who chose life during unplanned pregnancy. So in April, I started brainstorming this project that I had in mind. And I think it took me just a few days to figure out, I'm going to call this Unplanned Stories of Resilience. It's going to highlight unplanned pregnancies, and they're going to be stories that showcase resilience. And from there, it turned into more of a ministry. So before I used to call it like, oh, it's my storytelling project. Now it's an actual pro-life storytelling ministry that my husband is also involved in. And so our goal for this ministry is to end the stigma and change the conversation surrounding unplanned pregnancies. I think there's a statistic out there that says 61% of unplanned pregnancies end in abortion. And I really think starting to combat this, it involves changing the conversations around unplanned pregnancies. Because when I went through it, people talked about unplanned pregnancies as though they were bad and they're going to destroy your future. And I really wanted to change that by sharing stories of men and women who've gone through them and overcame. They're successful,
Yeah.
they're living meaningful lives. And so that's what we hope to do with this ministry. It's just radiate hope, show people that they can achieve their dreams and still be successful and hopefully save some babies in the womb.
Yeah, I think that's a really amazing thing to do because you had touched on in our culture, in our society, it seems like we've gone in the direction of pitting women against themselves in a way or against their babies,
Mm-hmm.
where it's, you're a woman, but okay, you're not capable of having your dream career and having this baby, which is so confusing because supposedly we're supposed to be living in this culture of female empowerment and women can do anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's for some reason when it comes to pregnancy there's this like something in our society that is pitting the woman against her own dreams, against her own baby.
Mm-hmm.
What is like your response to that?
Oh man, it really saddens my heart and it breaks my heart. Like you said, we're living in an age where there's the female empowerment, this feminism is so strongly communicated. But when it comes to unplanned pregnancies, we don't communicate the same message. And it really breaks my heart because women are so strong. And I really think that to change that narrative, there's a few things that we can do. And it really starts with just day-to-day conversations, or if you know of someone who's going through an unplanned pregnancy, how do you respond to that? And I think the first thing is thinking of unplanned pregnancies are as just unplanned. I think one of the people that I interviewed, she said that. She said unplanned pregnancies are just that, unplanned. And I love what she said. Society sees children as a burden, that unplanned pregnancies are the end of your life. And that's a toxic mindset because we then view children as a burden. But me being a Christian, I believe in what the Bible says, that children are a heritage from the Lord, whether they're planned or unplanned. God sees them as a blessing. We should see them as a blessing. Another thing is unplanned pregnancies are only detours. They're not a disruption. People always say that's the end of your life. You're not going to recover from that. No, it's just a detour. And
Yes, I love
that's
that. That's
what,
a great way of looking at it.
yeah, that's what a lot of the people that I've interviewed talk about their unplanned pregnancies is they're just detours. Like when I went through my unplanned pregnancy, before I found out I was pregnant, that exact week, I was wanting to serve in the Peace Corps for 2 years. I had this dream job in mind of me working with Christian nonprofits. I was going to have the dream job. I'm going to be an overachiever. And I've always wanted to become a mom, but it was more like, oh, it's just something I'm going to do in the future. When I went through that pregnancy, that changed for me. The dream job became motherhood. And so I'm so glad that I had that detour because now I get to do this storytelling ministry. I get to connect with women and share their stories. And it's so meaningful and fulfilling to me. Like I've done so much in the past 4 years in journalism and the nonprofit sector. And those do not compare to the meaningful and fulfilling life that I'm living now because I went through that unplanned pregnancy. And it gives me
Yeah.
so much peace. Another thing is you mentioned like people see it as a hindrance to success. I think it's a hindrance to self-gain because you have to sacrifice, you have to delay certain things that you want to do to be a mom and raise another human being. And that correlates to us living in a hustle, self-centered culture where it's all about me. It's just me. And so when, an unplanned pregnancy comes our way, it disrupts that and it's, oh, well, I can't do what I want to do because there's another human being that I have to consider. And then Let's see. And the last thing I want to say is an unplanned pregnancy is only a season. A lot of people think I'm just going to be stuck in that. And there's going to be short-term sacrifices that you'll have to make. There's going to be a lot of adjustments to welcome a baby into the world, but it's only a season. And that baby is going to change your life for the better.
Oh,
And yeah,
that's amazing. It's so true. And we've
mhm,
seen that with so many of the moms that we help. The reality is like women are coming to us and they're in financial turmoil and they have an abortion
mhm,
scheduled. And I tell our counselors to say this. This is something that is just like a reality is that your circumstances are temporary, but abortion is
mhm,
permanent. But in life, I think just as people, we often tend to take the things that are happening to us that are bad, that are not great, that are not ideal. We just tend to think this is just my life. This is how it's going to be. But life
mhm.
is fluid, right? So there's good times, there's
Yep.
bad times, there's everything in between. But the reality is that it's not going to be that way forever. And so
Mhm,
many of our moms, like you said, their babies actually make them be more motivated and want to
mhm,
get their goal and get a better job and get in a better situation. So it's actually babies are a legitimate motivator for so
mhm.
many people. And I think it's a really important thing for us to continue this conversation of taking a step back out of this mentality that, like you said, babies are burdens. Like they're not burdens, out of this mentality that
Mhm,
women can't have their dreams and have their babies. And I was going to ask you, so when you guys found out you were pregnant, obviously you have a Christian background, and so abortion was out of the question. But growing up in the Philippines with a missionary family, that must have had a pretty big influence on you. So how was your upbringing? How did this kind of shape your perspective on life in the womb?
mhm. Yeah, so growing up in the Philippines, my stepdad was a missionary and a youth pastor. So I spent my upbringing serving with my family. We also have a kids ministry in the Philippines that they started, I think, back in 2000. And I spent, weekends serving with my family to help with the kids ministry. So going through that in my childhood really changed my perspective in life. It helped me be grateful for what I have and take advantage of the opportunities that I find in life. And another thing is that it encouraged me to steward what God has given me with and use my skills, my time to impact others. I think going through that period where I was volunteering with my family, my kids ministry really showed me how amazing kids are. I was a kid too, but I was volunteering with my family, and it's just kids are so resilient and kids are amazing. They're so intelligent, and you never know how this child will grow up, what they're going to do in life. And then these children that my parents impacted, that they invested toward, they're now doing such amazing things. They have their own ministries, they're getting degrees, they're getting married. And a lot of these children actually came from unplanned pregnancies, and just the resilience that their parents showed and that translated into their children's lives was so amazing to see. And that really gave me that passion for kids and being a mom. And so, yeah, that upbringing was so influential. It helped me become a great listener. That influenced the way that what I chose to study in college. I remember this one specific moment where we were in this really poor community, and one of the kids came up to us and talked about how every time it rained, their house would get flooded. And we just listened the entire afternoon. He was showing us around his community, and by the time that he was done, he didn't thank us for the food that we gave him or the clothes or anything like that. He thanked us that we listened to him. And I think deep in our hearts, people want to feel seen and heard. And so I'm a listener first, a writer second. And yeah, that upbringing has definitely inspired what I do and who I am right now.
Wow. Well, there's a saying that you have two ears and one mouth, right? So
Hmm.
you have two ears for listening. And that's an extremely important thing, especially in the area of listening to women that are in facing this unplanned pregnancy, or they're like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this baby? Like, how am I going to do this? Sometimes really all they need is just someone to say it's going to be okay and then hear them, because you might be
Hmm.
their only outlet for what's going on. And that's really something that's incredible about you and your platform, Unplanned Stories of Resilience. I love that. I love the word resilience. I love that you listen. I love that you give a platform to women to share, because it
Mm-hmm.
shows just how strong they are and
Mm-hmm.
counters this narrative. And what an amazing upbringing, like such a unique upbringing as well. Not
Yeah.
something we all had. So I think it's amazing just how God has used you to start this ministry. I can completely understand not my whole life thinking I was going to do something else. And then God's, nope, I got another plan for you, little detour here, little detour there.
Yeah.
And,
Mm-hmm.
where we end up. So I think it's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And my next question was literally saying you have a deep passion for listening to people. So that's so awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and sharing their stories. But have there been any stories that have been shared with you through Unplanned Stories of Resilience that have just really touched your heart?
Yes. I think all of them have touched my heart, but I think I'll share one story. So I think a few weeks ago, I wrote about a friend of mine from church who chose life during her first unplanned pregnancy and sadly had an abortion during her second unplanned pregnancy. That was my first time writing about a woman who got an abortion. And it took me a few days to write her story because I wasn't sure how to present it. How do I talk about abortion? Because as a storyteller, I want to speak the truth with love. Ultimately, when you're writing a story, you want to exemplify the truth about a topic, about this person's life in a way that is gentle, that is loving. And I didn't really know how to go about that. So during my interview with her, when she was talking about her abortion, we both started crying, and I realized that to be able to talk to women who have had an abortion or maybe are considering an abortion, I think talking about that topic from a standpoint of grief really changes the conversation. And I learned that during the interview. My friend, it took her more than 30 years to find healing from her abortion. It's been more than 30 years and she still remembers her baby boy. And when I allowed her to talk about her baby, she just had so much joy talking about him, speaking his name. And that really opened my eyes. I can connect with these women who have had an abortion if I talk about it from the standpoint of grief, from loss. And I think that's something that we forget to talk about when we're talking about abortion is the grief. It's a loss of a life. And how does that impact the woman that has gone through it? We don't often think about what type of grief they're experiencing. And I've now interviewed a few women who have had abortions, even though they've chosen life as well. And they talk about the grief. To this day, they still remember everything that happened. And I think it's important that when we talk about abortion or talk to women who have gone through it, that we should speak the truth with love. And I think the best way to go about it is to talk about it from the standpoint of grief and bring that empathy and talk about the loss of a child and what the mother lost as well.
100%. And you understand firsthand about loss, and it's different than loss after an abortion, but it's still loss. Like I understand that. Nathan and I did embryo adoption, and we did the transfer, and we got that negative pregnancy test back. And there's nothing like wondering what your baby would have looked like, or
Mhm.
that. And that's something that I feel like any woman, no matter what the loss is, can understand.
Mhm.
And you talked about with women with abortion, I think our culture, and not even just the culture, but even pro life people as well. Not everybody, but some people I've seen on social media commenting, they're like, women can't feel loss after an abortion because they chose to do that. If you look at the big picture, at what information women are getting prior to an abortion, and I've talked to women that are post abortive as well, did they actually know what they were doing? A lot of
Mhm.
times, no. Did they actually think that they would experience pain or grief after the abortion? Probably not, because no one's telling them that they're going to experience that, right? Planned Parenthood is
Mhm.
like, oh, it's just like getting your tonsils removed. It's no big deal. It's a grain of rice. It's nothing. And when
Mhm.
you're putting your trust in certain people, and then you're discovering that women really do feel grief after abortion.
Mhm.
And as someone who's never had an abortion, I can only imagine the pain, but my heart breaks for them because
Mhm.
it's not something that you ever forget. And so I think that's something that you and I have in common, where it's, if we can continue to share these stories, we can probably save lives. Because if we can even
Mhm.
help one mom to avoid that lifetime of maybe not even pain or grief for the rest of their life, but even just remembering it and always having that hole in their heart, it's totally
Mhm.
worth it, right? So
Yeah. Mhm.
I think it's amazing that you share their stories. And I'm excited to connect you with our Let Them Live moms as well, so that
Mhm.
they can share with you, because talk about resilience, women pulling
Mhm.
themselves up by the bootstraps when they've been abandoned by everybody else. They do it, and talk about empowerment. So that's going to be something I'm really looking forward to, is getting you connected with the Let Them Live moms.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be awesome. Keep your guys' eye out. We'll be sharing that on social media. But I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot about the stories that you've shared and the women that you've interviewed. What advice or just encouragement would you have, based on your own experiences and the stories that you've shared, would you share with women that are going through their own challenging times or unplanned situations? Like, what would be the things that you would say to them just to give them some encouragement?
Before I give an encouragement to the women, I think I would also like to give an encouragement to the men as well, because
Yes.
part of my story involves my husband, Cooper. I'm going to talk about him really briefly. So, when I went through that unplanned pregnancy and I was at that doctor's appointment, I originally came in for a rash, and I had told the doctor, well, my period's late too. So they gave me had me do a pregnancy test. And Cooper knew that I was at the doctor's appointment and that they were going to do the pregnancy test. And I told him, I texted him, hey, we need to talk later. And immediately he responded with pregnant emojis, and he was so excited. Whereas I was so scared. I was so nervous. I didn't know what to do. And I came home to the apartment, and he had this look of joy in his eyes. And I had the box of the pink shoes in it. He was just crying with tears of joy. And I was so shocked by his response. I'm like, we're not married, we're graduating. Like, how are you so happy about this? And one of the first things that he did was he hugged me, and he told me how much he loves me, and that he was going to stand by my side, and that he was going to marry me, that we were going to raise a baby together. And when he said that, almost all of the fears that I was having that afternoon at that doctor's appointment just went away. There's a statistic that says like 64% of women who've undergone an abortion did so due to pressure from other people, like their parents, their boyfriends, but especially the man. How the man responds in that critical moment changes a lot of things. And so when
Yeah.
I was met with encouragement, with support, with love from Cooper, that just gave me so much relief. And throughout the entire pregnancy, he motivated me. He was my cheerleader. That pregnancy was really rough on my body, and I was struggling in school, and he kept saying, you can do this, you're strong. And I did think about abortion. It was a thought that I would have, and I knew that it was wrong. I didn't want to do it, but it was always there. And he would always tell me, you're going to be a great mom. This is something that you've dreamed about for such a long time. You're going to do such a good job. And so to all the men that are going to view this podcast, like, if you are someone going through an unplanned pregnancy with your girlfriend or your significant other, go home and tell her how much you love her and how strong she is. Because your initial response is going to determine how she's going to react
Can
as well
change
to that unplanned.
everything.
Absolutely. So that's my encouragement to the men. Go home and tell her how strong she is and how much you love her. And then to the women who are going through unplanned pregnancies, you're going to be a great mom. Prove people wrong. You are a strong woman. If people around you say that you can't do this or you can't do that because of your unplanned pregnancy, prove them wrong. Get the degree, get that job, prove to them how resilient you are, and don't let anybody tell you that you aren't strong enough to do something because of an unplanned pregnancy. You got to fight for yourself. You need to speak life to yourself and the truth when everyone around you is spouting words of discouragement and just know that there's a beautiful baby growing inside you. And of all the people in the world that could have that specific baby, it's in you. You have that baby. You are chosen to be the mom of this growing child who's one day going to be a leader, maybe a CEO. You don't know what the potential of that child is, and you get to raise that child and help them grow and just walk alongside them. So there is hope, and there's going to be a beautiful future ahead of you.
Oh my gosh. Literally, before you said those things in my mind, I was like, God chose you to be their mom. And then you said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that is seriously the direction we need to go with this. You're strong and
Mm-hmm.
you're literally creating a life. No one else can do that. Women
Mm-hmm.
can do that. Oh, pregnancy always makes it's a miracle. It literally is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's so amazing. Well, what a wonderful note to end on, just an encouraging thing for all of the women out there. And I'm so grateful for your perspective, Loren. I think that you gave some amazing insights like unplanned pregnancies. They're just detours, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a detour. It's not a full stop. Your life is over. That's that. And
Mm-hmm.
I just really appreciate the work that you're doing. And how can people, if someone's listening and they want to get more involved or they want to support you somehow, like how can everyone get connected and support you?
Yes, so they can find this ministry, connect with the ministry on Instagram. So it's at unplanned, the lower dash, pro life stories. And then on my Instagram, we have the link on our website. And I mainly post the stories on Instagram. But if you want to read all the full stories, you can view the website and you have more information there.
Thank you again so much, Loren, for being on, for sharing. I'm really looking forward to hearing more stories, sharing those stories. I think that if we can continue to make a platform where women and men, right, are
Hmm.
vocal about their experiences, we can start to create more and more of a culture of life.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again so much. And I hope you have an awesome day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Let Them Live podcast. I would like to give a special shout out to Patrick at Moon Shadow Studios, who does an amazing job of editing our podcast. If you're ever in the need for a podcast editor, he is definitely the one to go to. Let Them Live is a Christian nonprofit dedicated to supporting women who are considering abortion primarily due to financial burden. 73% of women have abortions because of financial struggles, and we're here to help bridge that gap. Our goal is to provide the emotional and financial support these women need to feel empowered to choose life. If our cause resonates with you and you're interested in learning more, getting involved, or making a donation, please visit our website at www.letthemlive.org. One amazing way to contribute is by joining our Heartbeat Club, where you can become a monthly donor, and your ongoing support will ensure that we can continue helping women every single month. You can also follow us on social media to stay up to date with all the amazing stories and ways that you can be part of our mission. You can also find me on Instagram at Emily Burning. Thank you again for listening, and please join us for more upcoming inspiring stories and conversations.